Good morning, everyone. It's Joe Waxman here. This morning I wanted to talk about something a bit more practical, the idea of B12 in a vegan diet or vegetarian diet, so B12 and veganism. So first thing, I'm about veganism. I'm not a vegan, but I do primarily eat vegan foods, like 90% of my, upwards of 95%, 98%, I don't know. I eat mostly grains, beans, vegetables, seeds, not just vegan diet, but I'm not a vegan. Just a few words about that. I don't believe in dogmatism, and even though I get the vegan morality, the motivating factors behind veganism is environmental and caring for animals, but I think what they're neglecting is that the primary animal that we need to take care of is this animal. This is an animal. This flesh, this is an animal. We have an animal right here. That's our primary responsibility on this planet, above all else, to take care of this body, this animal. And if you have a rigid, dogmatic idea behind your diet that says, I cannot eat animal food because of, this idea, that's not only philosophically juvenile, it's not correct on so many levels. So I don't want to get too into that, but we need to take care of this body first, and sometimes it requires eating some fish or eating a little bit of wild white meat fish or organic dairy or organic eggs, or for some people even organic meat. So anyway, I'm not a vegan. That's the first thing. Second thing is, why am I talking about these things? Well, number one, I have a vegan. I have a vegan moon. No, I have a Virgo moon, and Virgo is always concerned about health topics. But I was born and raised macrobiotically. I was born and raised with these kind of things. My father, together with his brother, started the first health food store in Philadelphia called Scene. Now they had, sort of like GNC supplement type stores, which they called health food stores before then, but they were the first to start a health food store that had organic produce, organic grains and beans, and even there wasn't even that much organics back then. They had to get farmers, not them personally, but in the greater macrobiotic community, because they were following the teachings of macrobiotics, which came from Japan, George Osawa, Michio Kushi. The macrobiotic community had to establish organics in America. Back then, there was no organics. So I came from the lineage that one of the main influences behind the whole natural foods movement, what we see now today with Whole Foods and Jeff Bezos, that all started primarily with macrobiotics. We weren't the only ones, but we were one of the big ones, one of the big pushes to create the whole natural food, health food movement, right? So that I grew up with that. Okay, so that's integral in who I am. Health food. From before I was born, my parents were thinking about these things. My father still teaches. He has the Strengthening Health Institute. He writes books. He teaches classes. He counsels, and he's had great success with that, healing people that doctors have said left for dead, said that you're not gonna heal, and then they go to see my father and they get better. So I have a big, foundation in health food. So I just want to talk about B12 a little bit in the vegan diet. B12 is incredibly important, and B12 is one of the main. It's probably the single most important vitamin to be concerned about, because there is no reliable source of B12 in the vegan diet. Let's just put that on the table. There are unreliable sources of B12. For instance, tempeh, seaweed, other fermented foods may or may not have B12, but you can't rely on them. And here's the important point, that B12 is necessary. It's absolutely necessary for health, for for our nervous system, for mental health. There can be serious long-term problems if somebody becomes B12 deficient. And once you become B12 deficient, it's too late. Like you can already do permanent brain damage at that point. So you never want to let yourself become B12 deficient. It's not like other, vitamin or mineral deficiencies where, you can become deficient and then it's fine if you take, the steps to get back. If you, excuse me, once you find out that you're B12 deficient, it might be already too late. Like you might already have some permanent brain damage. And then there are other factors. I have a hard time remembering like all the details. I'm just kind of a big picture kind of guy, but I do know that in Europe, where they have less B12 fortified foods, there were more incidences of strokes among vegans. This is significant because that directly correlates to B12 deficiency, where B12 plays a vital role in cleaning out the arteries, in reducing atherosclerosis. So what's happening is that these B12 deficient vegans are getting clogged arteries, right? Like you think that happens from animal food and what's the word? Fatty foods and I can't even remember what's it called, the chemical that clogs the arteries. That eggs have tons of cholesterol. But vegans are getting clogged arteries, right? Because they don't have enough B12. Because at least in America, we're fortifying with B12. Now, I don't agree with all the fortified foods, but at least B12, that's really important, right? Some other fortifications, some other vitamins can actually do harm, like D3 and calcium and things like that. There's certain ones that are just like not healthy. But with B12, that's actually necessary. So vegans or people who are not eating much animal food, you need to eat B12 fortified foods, and just to be safe, take a B12 supplement, a pill. That's the only vitamin I recommend. And it's the only pill I take, actually. I don't take any, like nothing. There's no like, oh, a little this, a little that. I don't take pills. I take a B12 pill. That's it. I don't take any pills from the doctor because I don't see a doctor. I don't have health insurance. I am my own doctor, and my father is. If I have a health problem, I can call my father. But generally, I'm my own doctor because I have a brain and I trust myself more than my doctor. And I don't take any pills. I don't take, I never, when I had, severe anxiety, I never took a pill for that. Or if I had depression, I never took a pill for that. I don't take pills. But a B12 pill is necessary for everyone who is not eating, enough animal food. And, even though I'm not vegan, I don't like much animal food. I just, that's my personal choice. It's not because I think it's morally wrong to eat animal. I don't think it's morally wrong to eat animal food. I think it's morally wrong to not take care of your body. I think that trumps everything. So I think it's a moral responsibility to take care of this body. So that's why I eat animal food when I feel it's necessary for me. But generally, I don't crave it and I don't feel like I need it energetically, right? It's not just nutrition. It's the fundamental understanding in macrobiotics is that food has an energetic influence. And once we become sensitive to that, we can really navigate our diet in a much more conscious way. We can pick and choose foods that will enhance our life and enhance our direction, and we can steer in a much more awake perspective to guide our life. And animal food is not just, it's not just about the moral consequences of taking foods and this and that. And it's an energetic thing. Animal food will affect us energetically this way or that way. You become sensitive. You can feel it. I can feel it. Fish will affect me one way. Eggs will affect me another way. And dairy, depending on if it's soft dairy, hard dairy, what kind of dairy, cooked, how, everything. You become sensitive to it once you start paying attention to it. Just like anything else, once you pay attention to something, you can become very subtly aware of the nuances. Like if you're a musician, you have an ear for music and you can hear things. You can hear the different instruments and you can hear the pitches and tones and the beats and the rhythm and you're hearing things that nobody else can hear. Or same thing as whatever your profession is, if you're a writer or a painter or a mechanic or an engineer, whatever your specialty is, you're going to be aware of things on a far deeper level that other people are not aware. Other people just have no idea what you're talking about. And you'll be like, yeah, that's because you haven't paid attention as long as I have. If you pay attention to food for as long as I have, you become aware of the subtleties, the nuances of food. And believe me, food affects your mind, it affects your emotions, it affects your whole energy, right? So that's why these things are about much more than nutrition. But it pays to be aware of the nutritional things that we need to be aware of, like B12, for instance. And B12 is one of the things that we have to be aware of, whether we are vegan or not. If you're eating, like I said, if you're eating plenty of animal food that's has outdoor access, pastured cows and free-range chickens and all that, wild fish and seafood, fine. Energetically, I don't want to eat that, and it's not a moral thing. My moral compass, my moral objective is to provide this body with everything it needs. And that means taking what I need, not more than I need, but what I need from the vegetable world, from the animal world, from whatever, right? So I don't believe in veganism. I'm primarily, and I, that's the irony, I don't believe in veganism, but I'm 99% vegan, right? Because I just don't need it. But I've been doing this a long time. Yeah. What else? So that's basically it for B12. By the way, you can also become B12 deficient if you're eating very poor quality animal food, because, for instance, cows that are factory farmed aren't getting adequate B12 because unless they're getting injections, they're not getting B12 from their diet because they're not getting fed a natural diet. They're not eating bugs and dirt. That's where cows get their B12. Cows don't get B12 from grass. Cows get B12 from eating dirt on the grass and bugs on the grass. So cows eat bugs, by the way. So cows are not vegan. In fact, there are no vegan animals, just to get back on the topic of veganism. There's not a single vegan animal because animals don't wash off their food like we do. They don't sterilize it. They don't kill they don't get off all the dirt and the microbes and the bugs. So all the herbivore animals are getting B12 through bugs and dirt, right? Now, I'm not saying go out and eat bugs and dirt, but I'm just saying, veganism, the vegan ideology, not the practice, the ideology is not very evolved. Some people do need to eat little to no animal food for a period of time because they're making up for excess animal food that they've eaten in the past. And they're mixing up their biological needs with a juvenile ideology, right? So the practice of veganism is fine, generally speaking, if your body needs that. And I believe a lot of vegans do need that for a time period, but they just don't understand the bigger picture, that they're not on the moral high ground. It's just their body's asking for a much lighter diet for a time period. And then after that, you have to come back a little bit, right? Problem is they go too far, and then you'll see this again and again, especially like you can research YouTube videos where like, why I'm not vegan anymore, because they didn't do it right in the first place, right? And they had the wrong ideology behind it. Yeah, so it's about balancing and putting this animal first. This is the primary animal we need to take care of. Make sure you're getting enough B12, and don't get mixed up with bad ideologies. If you need to be vegan, realize that everything has a time and place. And there could be a time in the future where if you need to be 100% vegan now, that in the future you might need to incorporate some fish, or depending on who you are, or what your inclinations are, maybe a little bit of organic dairy, or maybe a little bit of organic eggs. I can't tell you specifically, right? You know, if you ask me specifically what should I eat, then I could come up with some recommendations, but I'm just giving very broad recommendations here for everyone. And there's no one diet for everyone or one recommendation for everyone. That's why I'm not a vegan advocate, and I don't believe that people who are pushing veganism for everyone are really on the ball about that. However, I do think everyone could benefit from a plant-based diet that does not exclude animal food, but it's just primarily plant-based. And for developing consciousness, yes, plant-based diet for sure. For growing and evolving, for the benefit of humanity, for the benefit of the animals and the earth. And I do believe we need to take care of animals, and factory farming is one of the worst practices out there. But we can have cows and chickens, and I don't believe there's any good reason to eat pigs or have pigs as farm animals. They don't really do anything good, and we don't need to eat them. So pigs, in my opinion, are just indulgent. Like if you're eating pigs, there's no necessity for that. That's just indulgence, and they're far too intelligent to eat anyway, and they're omnivorous. So pigs, in my opinion, I wouldn't recommend them for anyone. However, cows, dairy, like the way they do it in India, I think cows are better off. Some people say, well, they're better off in the wild. No, they're not. Are you better off in the wild? Why don't you go live in the woods, right? Like, go live in the woods then. While, caveman, go for it. You think you're better off? Have fun fighting off the wolves with sticks and rocks. So cows benefit from humanity because they're protected, right? And they're fed and they're cared for and they're loved. If they are cared for and loved, if they're raised and taken and treated properly, which they can be. And then there's a natural exchange. If you take some dairy from a cow, which is revered like they do in India, cows are holy in India. That's a great, way to do it. There's no problem with that. That's a win-win situation with animals. And there are win-win situations. Or if you have chickens and you treat them very well and you protect them and you give them food, and then, as an exchange, you eat their eggs, that's a win-win situation, right? Same thing with sheep. You shear the sheep for their wool and you treat them well. That's a win-win situation, right? So I'm all for treating animals with dignity and respect and honor, and using them in proper, appropriate ways. So, yeah, that's it. Take your B12 pills, guys, and think about food. Like, use food for consciousness. These things are not separate. I mean, I talk about astrology, I talk about consciousness and spirituality, but I also talk about food and diet because all these things are interrelated. These are not separate. These are not compartmentalized issues. It's not like, like in this modern world, we have this idea where, like you have to become a specialist and you can only talk about one thing that's your thing and you can't talk about anything else. Well, the way I grew up, we talk about everything, macrobiotics. We try and put good understanding, consciousness, dialectical thinking towards everything, because this is about whole life. You know, we have these bodies, we have these minds, we have these hearts, and we have to put them all into balance and perspective, right? We have to use our consciousness and apply it to everything, not just one thing or the other. We're not just going to be like spiritual, meditating, drinking Coca-Cola, because that's schizophrenic, you know, because we're trying to be more conscious, but yet we're unconscious and in whole big areas, right? You know, Coca-Cola, that example, if you don't get it, Coca-Cola is destructive, you know, and you can't be like seeking enlightenment while at the same time being blind to the destructiveness of Coca-Cola or eating McDonald's hamburgers, right? That's destructive. That's not, there's no consciousness there. It comes with tons of karma, you can't, on the one hand, be responsible for the poor treatment of animals fed in the worst ways and kept in the worst conditions, that's polluting the earth, destroying the environment and everything, you know, one of the worst practices on earth, and then be like, oh, I'm so spiritual, seeking enlightenment, oh, you know, that's schizophrenia. That's crazy. That's insanity, right? So we have to include all these things. We have to talk about all of these things. That's why I'm not just a one-trick pony. I don't just do astrology or just do spirituality. It's got to be, we have these bodies, so we got to bring it down to earth, you know. We got to talk about the physical stuff, the mundane stuff, the practical stuff, as well as the high-minded spirituality, astrology, consciousness. So it's all these things. So that's why I talk about it the way I do. And it doesn't fit in our modern society like very well yet, but I hope it will in the future. And so I still don't know how to, you know, I call it macrobiotics, I guess, for lack of a better word, but there's no real way to coin it in the modern society that everyone understands. So it's kind of a bit of an anomaly. I don't know how to present myself, but it is what it is, and we'll get there. All right, that's it for now. All right, thanks, bye.